with all these new pilots being needed, what impact is that going to have on climate change? Like, what does it mean to train a whole new generation of pilots in the middle of a climate emergency? Well, George Hibberd, who's my next guest, is a former commercial pilot who left the cockpit 3 years in a row over concerns about aviation's environmental impact. He now works with an organisation called Safe Landing, a group of aviation workers pushing for a more sustainable future for the industry. And I spoke to George a little earlier and began by asking how he views the pilot shortage and whether the industry's growth plans are really compatible with climate goals.
I'm now part of a global community of aviation workers that want to live in a world where aviation flourishes in harmony with nature. And this compromise, this balance that we have to find for training more workers, expanding the industry, but also trying to balance that with the obligations, both morally and scientifically, to tackle the emissions of aviation is a really tough balance to strike. What we say in Safe Landing is that the industry is expanding possibly in the wrong direction, expanding with fossil fuel infrastructure, fossil fuel aircraft, and fossil fuel trained pilots is perhaps the wrong direction to go in. And instead, we should be focusing our efforts and our research, our development, our innovation, and our funding towards technologies of the future that are going to enable our industry to thrive for generations to come, not just for the next 5-10 years.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of airlines do talk about things like sustainable aviation fuels and, zero emission plane. I mean, are we sort of pinning too much hope on tech that could perhaps still be years away realistically?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think a lot of the sustainability pathways that airlines and governments are currently setting out are extremely high risk. A lot of them focus on technology that's not yet really proven, things like hydrogen electric. A lot of pathways rely on carbon capture and removals, again, which has not been proven at scale. And to us, as an aviation worker's perspective, this is really high risk. If this was a flight and the emergency alarms were going off, we wouldn't just ignore them and hope for the best. We would put in place a plan that is completely scientifically proven and is as low risk as possible, because ultimately it's going to be aviation workers, air traffic controllers, cabin crew, flight crew that are going to be impacted by whether our industry can decarbonize quick enough to, one, avoid climate collapse and eventually societal collapse, but also panics climate legislation. We're set to bust through 1.5 degrees, our Paris Agreement. If that happens, we could have panicked climate legislation, which makes aviation fall off a cliff. And a lot of the investment that's currently going into fossil fuel expansion could become stranded assets. And that's something we really want to avoid.